really excited for this at KinActive. Abby here is going to tell us a little bit about what she does and how she's helped lots of families come into us. And then we'll share a little bit about just KinActive and what we do and just how this wonderful partnership and relationship that we have is changing lives. I think we're on such a good mission. Our mission is to change the way the world treats their kids. And you are doing such a huge piece of that, getting families the care and things that they need. So why don't you start, kind of tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so my name's Abby Zacharitz. I'm known in the internet world as Advocacy Abby. And I really started this journey, honestly, about 11 years ago. I have 5 kids, and my 4th child got past all the barriers and got into our pool and had a near drowning. When he fell in, called 911, did resuscitation, and we were not able to resuscitate him. As we got to the hospital, and so they continued to work on him, and they actually ended up calling it, and they told us that he was not going to make it. They actually came into the room and said, he's not going to make it. We're going to bring you in to say goodbye. And when I went into the room, Wyatt was on the table with a ton of people around him, but nobody was working on him. I later found out that the standard protocol is to let the mom see you stop working. So there was a bunch of people around him, but one person doing chest compressions. And so when I walked in, he looked up at me, the man, and he stopped. And I remember just losing it and screaming and begging, please don't stop, keep working on him, keep going, please, Jesus. And I was praying and begging the people around us. And Dr. Bunalai, who was the longest running intensivist at the time at Shands, he's no longer there, but he had walked over because he had unfortunately seen this a lot. We're in Florida. Drowning is the number 1 cause of accidental death under the age of 4. It's number 2 for under 14. People don't know that. I didn't know that. I was a lifeguard. And so Dr. Bunalai walked over and said, show mom his heart. And, I thought he was trying to tell me something, but he was trying to get me to come to terms that there is nothing alive anymore because they had already looked. They had put the machine on because sometimes they can miss it just with, listening. So they're let's literally look at his heart and see if there's any activity, and there was none. And when they put the device on his heart, I remember being incredibly confused. And I'm not a medical expert, but I've watched enough episodes of, Grey's Anatomy to know what a thumping looks like. And so I remember sitting there, and then you could hear it. All of a sudden it was whoa, the thump. And so they just went into action. The whole room erupted in movement, and I was escorted out of the room, put up into the waiting room for the PICU, and they actually documented that Wyatt had spontaneous heartbeat. The doctor said in all his years of being a physician, he had never seen this happen. Matter of fact, they called the PICU and said, hey, get a bed ready. We have a really sick kid coming up, because he was in the emergency room at the time. They called back and told the nurse practitioner, don't worry about it. The baby is passed. And they called back again and said, he's alive. And so we were really just thrust into this world of the unknown, being at a diagnosis. He had a global anoxic brain injury. They said every part of his brain was affected. They said the likelihood of him making it through the night was slim to none. And then he did. And then they said, okay, the next 3 days, we're going to put him on an ice bed. And most kids don't survive this. Their organs begin to fail. And then he survived. And not only did he survive, but his organs started to function correctly, because they had put him on medicine for his kidneys and different things. And they just started working. And we were in the PICU for 52 days. And when we left, we went to Brooks Rehab. And Brooks is an amazing, top-notch facility. It's in Jacksonville, Florida. They see lots of accidents, spinal cord injuries, anoxic injuries. But you have to be in a position to receive therapy. And they were not able to find a swallow. They were not able to get him to track. And so they sent us home after a week. And it was the most disheartening, and lost. And I honestly, as a parent, I was I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing. I keep waiting for him to, quote, wake up. I don't understand. Every movie I've ever watched, they eventually snap out of it, right? There's no snap. I didn't realize this was his conscious state. This is where he was at the time. And then I started talking to moms and other moms that had been there. And they were telling me about things they were trying. They were trying functional neurology. They were trying stem cell treatments. They were trying intensive physical therapy. All of this was brand new to me. Physical therapy to me, I was a student athlete in college. It was, recovering after a sprained ankle. I never thought I never thought kids went to PT.
Right.
I just didn't know anything about this world. Never knew anybody in my family with a diagnosis, which later I found since there were plenty of them, but they were unseen. And so I just started diving into this world and like digging and finding things. And then I quickly found that these things were not covered by insurance. Insurance was so limiting, and they're like, you can get 1 hour a week and when you need to recover or you need to emerge and you're gaining these things, you need a lot more than that. And so I heard a friend told me about this thing called a grant. I live in Gainesville, Florida, so University of Florida's here. Grant to me was like nonprofit education. They apply for grants, not people. But I was opened up to this world of grants and foundations and organizations that will support families. And so I applied to my first ever grant. It was the Live Like Jake Foundation, started by Carrie, who had lost her son to an air drowning and decided she was going to do something about it. And so she started prevention methods, and then she also has grants for non-traditional and traditional therapies that kids that are survived these treatments or these incidents. So I got my first grant. We went to hyperbaric oxygen for a week, and we also went to functional neurology for a couple of weeks, and we did all these different things. And I started realizing there's got to be a lot more out there. And so I just started digging. And before you knew it, I had tons and tons and tons of grants on this really pretty Google spreadsheet. It's like the best ever. I'm not the best with tech, but I just was able to get my son to, some of the top neuro docs in the world. I got him to stem cell across the nation to Dr. Profrock. We were able to do so many things that weren't covered by insurance because of these grants. And so one by one, just started telling other moms about it. And then I met Support Now, and that kind of lands us where we are today.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm tearing up.
I know. I didn't know any of that. So that was as much for the audience as it was for me and him.
Yeah. And I think, being on the clinician side of it now, the benefit that intensives have, like just from what we do here, the results that we see and the things that we hear from the parents of, we see more progress in 2 weeks than we have in 2 years with therapy back home. And like, it pulls on us, like we want to help all these people. And so that's where I love this relationship that we have, where like we can send parents to you that need help, that are looking for help.
I mean, it 100% is true that we have a broken insurance model. And it's almost like this negative feedback loop of there are all these, people who are kind of in the middle of income, and, they don't have the ability to have maybe the Medicaid services, make less money than, they're under that umbrella to where they're still making enough money. And then if you do have the money, it's like, well, I still have to live. And so you're really dependent on them. And I found that out. And when I started KinActive Kids, I was like, I don't want to be governed by the insurance model. And my take on it was, let's get them in and out as quickly as I can, which would save them money. But you're right. I mean, especially in pediatrics, because there aren't a lot of healthcare professionals that are in pediatrics, that are really knowledgeable. And so this is so good because, you kind of have to find a way, because this is kind of how the world is,
Yeah. And I'm thankful for the insurance we've had. Like, we were able to give our son a Medicaid waiver, but it's so limiting. Like, when they tell you, when non-healthcare professionals, and I don't care if they have a doctor on the board on the other end that's never seen my kid, has no concept of disability, they just have the license. I want the doctors around my kid to say, oh yeah, we do see emerging skills, therefore he should go do something. And that's what grants call for. Your physician or your PT can write a letter saying, we see emerging skills, or we haven't seen progress in a while. We need to bump it up. Let's try an intensive. And so that's what I love our relationship too, because you guys have what I like to say is like qualified needs, because it's really hard to get a grant if you don't know what you need. Sometimes I'll have people come to me and they'll say, times are tough. I have a kid that's disabled and everything's hard. That's really, really hard for me to support. Now I can go into Connect and I can say, start, funneling through, and you'll find like utility stuff, you'll find things like that. But when I have a parent come to me and say, we are middle class, we don't qualify for Medicaid, or they do, but they still don't get a lot of the things like intensives, and we're over the income limit for some of these grants. First of all, there are still other grants that don't. And so I like to point that out, like, hey, there's some that don't even look at income. Like, they understand because they're parents that are actually in your position. They know what it's like. They know what it's like to be middle class or even upper middle class. And I said, people hear the word upper middle class. So let me qualify this a little bit. On average, this is without emergency hospital stays, okay? This is just like a regular month. On average, costs $1.4 million to raise a child with a disability from 0 to 18. It costs $240,000 to raise a neurotypical healthy kid. That's a big gap. And so, and you have other kids and you have other considerations. So unless you're making, I mean, millions and millions and millions a year, like it's impossible to try to get the stuff that your child should have, right? And so like they need access to these things. There are organizations that do it. And so that's why I love that we can work together, because they go, hey, we want to get into KinActive. We just don't know how we're going to be able to do it. And they can come to us and we can make a really strategic plan through grants and fundraising. So, and sometimes it's and sometimes it's or. But we've been really effective and we've been able to help. I've helped families that are below the poverty line that need lots of support when it comes to grants and fundraising stuff, all the way to families that you would never think would ever need it. But when I sit down and go over their medical bills, I'm like, it is insane. I had one family I work with, they 30 days in the hospital, $800,000, no insurance, right?
That's
So,
insane. So here's a question for you. Do these grants just cover intensives, which is basically like really saturated therapy in whether it's a week, 2 weeks, or they're getting therapy every single day and they're trying to work on a big goal that would somewhat take maybe 6 months in average therapy, but this is going to accelerate that progress. So is it just kind of getting funding for that, or is it for medical equipment like wheelchairs, standers? Is it for maybe even like weekly therapy? Is it for, like hospital bills? Tell us a little bit about that.
yeah, it's all of the above. So what I became super frustrated with quickly as a parent when I started trying to look for grants is I'd go to a resource page. People have resource pages, but people are busy that have resource pages. They're doing intensives and they're, they are the foundation or whatever it is. And so they are not updating them continually. So I would come in and I'd be like, oh my gosh, there's so many grants. And then it would not fit my kid's diagnosis, or I would make too much money, or it wouldn't be what I needed. Like they only do this, or it'd be like, oh, we only do this in Southern California and I'm in Florida, right? And so I'd get really frustrated. And if you're already discouraged and you're already can feel very isolating place, it can be enough to make you stop looking. And so what we've created is Connect, the largest database of grants in the world, and you can sort it by location, diagnosis, and need. And those needs go from everything from respite care to bereavement, to camps, to therapies, to treatment, to financial support, to equipment like AAC devices, wheelchairs, accessible modifications to the home, you name it, we have it in there.
Is this, and this is a personal question, so I'm trying to understand it. Would it be something like it still goes through insurance and then it's a reimbursement, or is this just go straight through?
Yeah, so most, when I work with someone, I'll always tell them, please try to get your grant first, because 99% of the grants will pay the organization directly. So if somebody was going to KinActive, what I would tell them is, first, we need to get a quote. So we need a quote for your intensive. So you guys write up the quote, they get it, they apply for it. The foundation then sends the check to KinActive on that child's behalf. That eliminates any kind of misuse of funds, because it's going directly to the equipment company or to the therapist or to the hospital. And so it just gives the foundation a sense of ease of where the money's going. So I've only found a couple that will do reimbursement, and it's not for intensive or anything. It's like medical bills. Like you were in the hospital, you didn't realize, and now you can submit those medical bills. They still pay the hospital though. And so that they'll have them reimburse you. So it's just generally speaking, you want to get it beforehand and directly to the organization. So like for any clinicians out there, having where to pay is really important, because these foundations get a lot of applications. And so if it shows them, make payable to on the invoice, that makes it a lot easier for the foundations.
Yeah, the foundations we've worked with in the past, it's been really easy on the clinical side where, it's
there's not a lot of red tape. It's like invoice.
And that just shows the heart of these foundations, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, we're not going to play games. Tell us what you need. If we can help, we're gonna do it.
Right.
And our intensive is a little unique because we have the chiropractic and the physical therapy working together. So it's two, professions that really shouldn't be, are used to butting heads, but are now working together. And I know with some of the foundations, they have like questions of like, we've never seen this before. And we're like, but you will start to see it more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's just, and I think a lot of families are looking for something different in the chiropractic piece.
Yeah.
And just the way that we work together and look at the body, like the foundations that we've worked with are really interested in what we're
Yeah.
doing.
Well, what's really unique about you guys, just from a grant expert's perspective, is when it comes to applying, I could easily coach a family to be like, well, this can line up under the traditional umbrella because you have your therapist, and it can line up under non-traditional because you have your chiropractor. And so both of them, sometimes grants are specific. They say we want this or that. It's kind of like there's an equipment company I work with that has a walking robotic legs for kids, right? Well, that can be considered therapy and it can be considered an equipment. So like there's two angles to approach those grants. And so I'm very big on let's take a unique approach to your problem. The problem is we need to come up with X amount of money, and let's poke it every which way and get there. And so sometimes somebody will come to me and we might not find that kind of grant, but we find a grant for something else, cover that, and now that family can change that money over towards this. And so it's really a unique way to approach it.
What would you say is, I mean, if you can, I guess, quantify it, like the success rate of a parent coming to you with a special needs kiddo and them actually qualifying and receiving a grant?
Yeah, I mean, if they do the work, they're going to get a grant. Now, do they get a lot? Do they get for exactly what they want? Maybe not. But generally speaking, like, for example, I'm a middle class family. I've gotten grants for almost anything that's not been covered, I've gotten grants. Everything from like the Jossie stroller to stem cell therapy to travel across the nation. It just takes work. Right. Yeah. It's not, I don't apply for grants for people. I teach people how to fish because when they're done meeting with me, I want them to be able to use these skills for the rest of their child's needs. So I don't want it just to be KinActive. I want it to be the next time they go to KinActive and when they go to, the OT over there and when they need that wheelchair accessible van or whatever, I want them to know exactly how to do this so that in the future they can continue to do this. Yeah. And so, I try to help people realize like, okay, this is an easy way to do it. We create a toolbox, which is where they just gather all their information. Once they've gathered that, then they fly through it and they apply left and right. Because if they try to pull for each one, grant fatigue is a real thing. And so they'll quit. But if you're organized, you have what you need, you got your quote, you got your, proof of diagnosis. And I kind of go through all of that in the beginning. Let's get all these things and then let's go to the grants. And then I have families, some that are like, okay, I'll apply for grants, but I really need to get going because we're doing this one way or another and we need the money. I'm like, okay, so grants are like a marathon. Crowdsourcing, fundraising is like a sprint. So I'm really big on transparency. Just tell people this is not normal. Like I have never had to pay my son. He has paid for college like 6 times. Like I have never had to pay for anything like that with my other kids ever. So if you share that, if you're like, hey, this is the cost of the therapy. This is what we're doing. This is what it's going to cost to travel across the nation to get there. We want to see these gains made. It's an important time in their life. That's why we're putting this out there. People respond. It's when you go, hey, times are hard. Here's my GoFundMe. Nobody responds. But if you're transparent and use a good platform like Support Now, where you actually keep the money, then families tend to respond. And so I'll usually say, where do you want to, let's prepare for the marathon and let's start with a sprint and just get it going.
When I talked to you and Jordan at Support Now, like just that platform that y'all use is amazing. Yeah. Like not super trying easy to take the fees away. Yeah. Like they were telling me some of these other outsourcing, crowdsourcing, funding,
like GoFundMe
websites
or something.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna say the name, but
I've already dropped it. I mean, it's because it's brand awareness, and that's where people just naturally turn to meal train for meals. They turn to Caring Bridge for updates or Facebook for So there's one platform that actually has crowdsourcing where the donor rounds up, so 100% of the intended donation goes to the family. By the way, 93% on people on average round up. So people keep more of the money than they would even just using a general processing company.
I like to round down in general.
Yeah. But even if you do, so here's the beauty of that. Even if you do, if you opt, because people can opt out, I don't want to round up. It's still less than GoFundMe. Yeah. So no matter what, you're keeping more of the money. They also can coordinate meals with no fees attached. Meal Train does 7.9%. So yeah, I know, because nobody talks about it, right? Because this is we've been conditioned to use these tools. So we're just saying those are great tools and they've served a great purpose for a long time. We're just saying we have a better option that is not only focused on support for getting you there, like paying the bill, but When you go to intensive for 2 weeks and you have 3 kids at home and your husband's at work all day and he's losing his mind because he's having to pick up Sarah for ballet and take Bobby to baseball and still make dinner and go do his job, it's too much. This is not, most families don't have to do this. So that's where you're like, hey, could 3 of my friends drop off a meal for this week?
Yeah.
Just drop off a meal. And you can do that on this platform. So it's really just better. And then
I
you
love
get
the community of it.
Yeah, that's the whole point is we want,
bring people together.
yes, bring us together. Like we used to all, back in the day, live in the same area to support one another, to help each other that way. Now in this digital age, we're all spread out. But if you can tell people, this is the way you can support me, they're more prone to actually take action.
Yeah.
It's
That's
so
awesome.
Cool. Well, we have to get back to treating. So we will round this out. And I just want to say, from us, from KinActive, like, just thank you so much for everything that you're doing for these families. Like, because we hear it all the time. I told a mom this morning, this sweet girl is doing therapy, and the mom is talking about stuff, and I'm like, you need help, and I have a resource for you. And she like looked you up, followed you right then. Like, I know you're going to get a message from her. Yeah. We got a message in our KinActive University. We were doing a little Q&A for like our clinician education. And somebody on there had commented that they had gotten, I think, 3 grants from you to come to us and just getting the help that they need. And like, so thank you for taking all the time out that you take. Cause I know that's well, and that's just you're working your tail off, and you're a mom of a kid with special needs. Like, you are maxed out. So your legacy will live on, and like, you can touch other families and help them, and then that's just going to continue to grow. So just
thank you for what you guys are doing. I love, like, we need more people taking different approaches to problems that have been there a long time. And so like the fact that you guys are looking at it like this instead of just the same old way, I love that. It gets me excited. Like, I'm actually thinking, I need to do a consult with them to see, my son has this and this. Should I be going there? Should I have him, evaluated? So how do people evaluate if they're like interested in coming to KinActive for intensive?
That's like a great question. So what you can do is on our website, you can actually schedule a consultation, which is like, a 15-minute thing to just a little bit about your kiddo and to see if it's a right fit. We'll answer questions about Kamp, give you information about Kamp. And a lot of times after that consult, they're actually looking at scheduling, and we will directly put you with Beverly, who can schedule you for a Kamp. But I would say there are no limitations, unlike some of the other treatment models that may have a weight limit or an age limit. We don't have that just because we work with the body and we work with the musculoskeletal system. So we don't have a lot of constraints on who we can treat. I would say most kiddos are definitely a candidate. But that just is a way to get a little bit more information than you can get just off the website. It's just scheduling consult.
That's great.
Kids.com is the website, and then there's a link on there for KinActive Kamp, which has a bunch of information. And I think, like you said, right now we have 2 kiddos, one Utah, and she had basically like a SMA type dystrophy, like something, it's undiagnosed. She doesn't have an official diagnosis because it's so rare. She's pioneering a new diagnosis with what's going on with her. So we have that. And then on the other end, we're working on a girl from Arizona or Nevada that's here, and we're working on helping her catch a baseball with a glove. She's a hemi, so right side's affected.
So there's a wide range.
Very functional, and like that's one of the big questions. Like, how can we help you as parents? Like, you can talk about goals and all of that, but what's going to be the best, like, functional? What's going to improve your quality of life? Like, can we help them get up and down off the toilet, or is it like, can we help them play with their siblings in the yard?
Go up and down stairs, get up and play with it, get off the floor easily so they can be with their other kindergarten classmates, things like that. It's different for every family.
Yeah, that's great. You guys are doing great work.
It's fun for us because we get to think outside the box.
Yeah, I love that. I wish there was more collaborations across, the
treatment, like the professionals.
Yeah. So like I've personally found, I find that within disabilities, cross collaborations. Like, so I watched a family, or a therapist actually, that treats families with autism, how to do certain things with sensory input. And it was super effective for my son, who has a brain injury, but he has a sensory issue. And so I was able to glean from them, what might help him, and it actually worked. And so I think the more cross-disciplinary, that's what it is, we can take approaches like, talking to each other, what's working over there might actually help.
Yeah.
over here. So.
You have to take your ego out.
Well, no, it's not even that. It's just the current insurance model does not support that because, first of all, you are back to back with clients. I mean, honestly, for full transparency, especially with PTs, I mean, if you take the time out to go talk to another clinician, it's like you don't get compensated anymore for that. And if you just do it out of the, goodness of your heart, well, they'll just keep on making you do those things and you'll just be run into the ground and then you won't be able to help anyone.
Right.
It really is just a broken model.
Yeah.
So trying to get away from that and finding ways that we can support kids in this somewhat new model. I think that's what you're trying to do and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. There's lots of foundations. So I always tell people, if you've thought about it, do it. If you thought about a foundation, do it. You'll never regret having a foundation.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for meeting with us. This was great. And I hope this helps to serve a lot of families. And hopefully we can hear the back end of this and hear families that come here or, just through Instagram that you've blessed.
Yeah. Awesome.
And real quick, what is the best way to get a hold of you? I know you talked about your Instagram, but maybe just round out real quick, like the easiest ways to get a hold of you.
Yeah. Instagram's always really, really fast. If you're looking for a larger need, wheelchair accessible van or intensive at KinActive, which, you have travel costs, stuff like that all together. Those are the ideal people to meet with me when they need a plan. If they need something like $2,000 or $3,000, connect, go there, you're going to find it like this. And so if they go to advocacyabby.com, they can simply click start here and they can book a time with me. Otherwise, they can start a registry. They can go to Connect and get a free account. It's all free to use. So, and it's free to work with me. It's just making sure you have that qualified need. And so if you're thinking about intensive, you got the quote from Emily and Matt, come on over and we'll get started.
And Connect is at supportnow.com.
Yeah, it's grants.supportnow.org and then supportnow.org and then advocacyabby.com. It's all getting merged together. We're just on the second phase, but right now they go to grants.supportnow.org.
Perfect.
And Advocacy Abby on Instagram probably has all of those links.
Yeah, it's all right in my bio.
Awesome.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you, Abby.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks.
Bye.